worker discovered something terrifying on his way home from work. He trembled as he reached out to touch the surface of the drilling pipe. Upon closer inspection, he found his fingers were covered in wet mud. Before he could react, more mud began spilling out from the wellhead. The sight immediately stunned everyone. The worker quickly called the control room.
We got flow out here.
Warning.
It's not stopping.
Hey, Tracy, are you seeing this?
She just kicking or that?
But the next second, the gushing mud, like a giant dragon, instantly broke through the protective wellhead. It knocked everyone at the scene to the ground.
Oh, shit!
The control room immediately closed the blowout preventer. With the valve in the pipe forcibly closed, the incoming mud was successfully blocked. But the crisis wasn't over yet. The person in charge of the pipe, Diga, had to open the drill pipe and release all pressure within 30 seconds. Only then could they prevent a greater disaster. Luckily, everything ended with a close call. He successfully stopped the erupting mud, but they had no idea that this was just the prologue to the deep-sea catastrophe about to unfold. 2.5 days earlier, a group of people took a helicopter to the Deepwater Horizon drilling platform for the final safety assessment of deep-sea oil extraction. At first, everyone was joking and laughing. Everything seemed so calm and peaceful. After all, this was their daily work routine. Soon, the helicopter safely landed on the helipad. Jimmy, as the head of the drilling safety assessment, stepped off the plane and saw the logging team preparing to leave. He was very confused by this, because according to the plan, they should have been doing mud testing at the bottom of the sea right now. But when Jimmy asked if the test had been completed, the other person didn't answer directly. It seemed like they were intentionally hiding something. Unclear about the situation, Jimmy and the others rushed to the control room. Mike, the electrical engineer, did a routine check of the platform immediately, but the instruments showed everything was normal. Even the power system had no issues. But a ship was docked near the platform. It was a ship specifically used for transporting mud. The fact that the ship was next to the platform meant all the preliminary drilling tests had been completed, but Jimmy hadn't received the mud testing results. This meant someone had deliberately skipped the testing process. They wanted to start oil extraction early. As the person in charge, he had to ensure the safety of the 126 people on the platform. To get to the bottom of things, Mike rushed to the central work area to inquire. The result was that all the drillers here said they hadn't done any mud testing. Then, he ran to the control room to ask. The chief operator, Jansen, finally revealed the truth. It turned out that BP had paid a large sum of money to have the logging team leave early. Mike quickly reported this to Jimmy. They agreed to confront BP's people together. Meanwhile, Mike habitually tossed a lucky coin into the sea. As the coin slowly sank to the bottom, an unimaginable catastrophe was silently approaching. The two then found the person in charge from BP. The drilling platform was rented by them. The drilling schedule had been delayed by 43 days. The rental fees alone had already exceeded $50 million. So, to save costs, they had forced the simplification of the drilling safety tests. Jimmy immediately opposed when he heard this. Even though he was being paid, he still had to be responsible for the safety of everyone on the platform. Under Jimmy's firm request, Old White reluctantly agreed to conduct a pressure test. Following the control room's instructions, the platform adjusted its direction. As Jansen closed the blowout preventer, the underwater pipeline gradually began to close. The mud in the pipe started flowing at an incredibly fast speed. The negative pressure test officially started. Old White looked at the instrument panel and started to panic. If the test failed, BP would have to spend even more money. After a minute of waiting, the pressure gauge began to change. It stabilized around 100, about 100 pounds per square inch. That was a very safe value. Seeing this result, Old White immediately became cocky. But what he didn't know was, suddenly, a large number of bubbles appeared on the seabed. The needle on the instrument panel instantly jumped to about 500 pounds and showed no signs of stopping. As the bubbles increased, the needle soared past the red line, reaching 1,395 pounds. Although the result was obvious, Old White raised an objection. Such a high pressure value, yet no mud had flowed from the drill pipe. This clearly didn't make sense. Jimmy and Mike couldn't explain the cause. At this point, Old White drew an analysis chart. The only possibility was the pressure sensor in the drill pipe was malfunctioning. Old White believed it was just a pressure blob that got stuck around the pressure pipe, causing the sensor to malfunction. It wasn't that the entire drill pipe had exceeded its pressure limit. That's why the values were off the charts. But no mud was coming out. He proposed to conduct another negative pressure test on just the pressure pipe. If the pressure gauge read 0, it would prove that the sensor had malfunctioned. mentioned, it wasn't a problem with the entire drill pipe's pressure. In fact, Old White's analysis had some logic behind it. Jimmy and Mike couldn't find a counter-argument. Plus, no one could confirm the situation on the seabed with their own eyes. They could only judge based on the data. Eventually, they reluctantly agreed to Old White's second test. At that point, the frequency of seabed tremors intensified. Countless rocks rushed into the pipe with the mud. Initially, the negative pressure was around 500, but as more and more rocks completely blocked the pipe, the pressure value in the pressure pipe dropped to 0. This was exactly what Old White wanted to see, but the pressure value in the drill pipe remained stable at 1,395 pounds. These two values should have been the same to be logical. However, no matter how Jansen tried to persuade him, Old White insisted that no mud was spilling from the pipe, which meant the drill pipe was perfectly fine, and he continued to pressure Jansen using his investor status. As a worker, Jansen didn't dare make a decision, so Jansen contacted the person in charge, Jimmy.
Ran the negative test. It was a good test. We got no pressure.
You sure about this, Jason?
Key line was good. Sure of that. It's the only thing I'm sure of. These guys are all for me. What do you want to do?
Zero flow, correct?
That's correct. No flow.
Although something didn't feel right, the data was right in front of them, and with Old White's constant urging, Jimmy had no choice but to approve the start of work. After receiving Jimmy's approval, Jansen immediately opened the blowout preventer. At that moment, the mud that had been held back in the pipe for so long suddenly surged up. The control room quickly began moving the mud, removing the balancing liquid used for pressure stabilization. Now, their last line of defense had been completely opened. Sure enough, within a few minutes, the pressure gauge spiked into the red warning zone, and the pressure continued to rise. Seeing this, Jansen quickly shut down the mud extraction, just as the workers were confused. Diga, who was on the platform, also noticed the anomaly. That's when the scene at the beginning of the film happened. This deep-sea catastrophe truly lost control from this moment on. Although the blowout was quickly contained, the underwater energy release was getting stronger. The blowout preventer used to limit the flow was crushed by high-pressure rocks. The unstoppable mud flowed through the pipes, heading straight for the operating room on the platform. Hearing the noise, the workers looked up and saw mud spewing out of the high-pressure pipes gap. Susan, seeing the alarm, thought it was another sensor malfunction. She was about to have the signal cleared, but when she called the workshop, no one answered, because everyone was desperately trying to shut the valves. Some experienced old workers yelled for the others to run, or they might be stuck there, and the pressure value, which had already exceeded 4,000, signaled that the doomsday judgment was coming. The next second, the ultra-high pressure mud began gushing out. Jansen urgently ordered all blowout preventers to be closed, but under such high pressure, this line of defense could only hold for a few more seconds. By now, the energy from the seabed had completely erupted. The just closed blowout preventer was shattered by the high-pressure rocks. But the mud flow, under such immense pressure, was like an iron wall. Diga couldn't take any remedial action. After multiple attempts, it was all in vain. What was even more terrifying was the rocks spewing out of the mud. They flew like bullets in all directions. Jansen immediately ordered Diga to leave the scene. Meanwhile, the cargo ship nearby finally realized that a blowout had occurred on the platform. The control room was already in chaos. The continuously gushing mud had destroyed all the surrounding equipment. Jansen urgently ordered Old Black to cut off the pipeline, but just as he was about to take action, he was knocked down by debris flying toward him. As Jansen tried to help Old Black up, a massive mud flow hit again.
We gotta go right now!
And as Old White escaped the control room, he saw an even more terrifying sight. The sprayed mud was mixed with large amounts of crude oil. These flammable and explosive